Hi, this is Charlene Chamberlain for Front Row. We're here at the Laurel Hill Cemetery in Philadelphia. It's a National Historic Landmark that sits on approximately 78 acres of ground. The horticultural gem is filled with sculptures and is known as Philadelphia's Underground Museum. With me today is the mesmerizing Mano Divina, and he is the musical director of the Divine Hand Ensemble. And I must say, they are the edgiest, coolest performance group that I've seen so far this year. They're a little bit classical, they're a little bit contemporary, a little bit steampunkish, and they're oh so not what you would expect. Welcome, Mano. It's so nice to see you again.
Thank you, Charlene. Thanks for having me here on your program.
You're very welcome. Tell me a little bit about the Divine Hand Ensemble.
The Divine Hand Ensemble is a 9-piece classical group fronted by the theremin. We perform opera arias, classical chamber music, movie soundtracks, and popular favorites, all with the theremin doing the lead vocals like a soprano opera singer.
And you, I'm told, are one of the top theremin artists in the world.
I am ranked 3rd in the world, actually, and an honor I'm very proud of. And I try to utilize that with every show to show people why by my playing and the repertoire that we choose.
So let's talk just lightly about the theremin. What exactly is a theremin? I know a lot of people out there don't know what that is. The first thing I tell them is that it's actually the sound that you hear on the Beach Boys, Good Vibrations, but it's so much more than that.
That is a great reference point. The theremin is the world's first electronic instrument ever invented. It is almost 100 years old right now.
Wow.
It was the first use of wireless technology, and it still remains today the only instrument in the world that you play without touching anything. The thereminist puts their hands in the electromagnetic field between the 2 antennas, and we are vibrating electrified air molecules to match the corresponding frequencies of notes.
So you're basically kind of harnessing air in a way?
Exactly. I'm controlling air, or wrangling air with my hands, and I'm bending it to make it sing.
And the notes on a theremin, are they like a keyboard would be on a piano? Similar to that? I mean, are the notes that way, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C?
Exactly the same as you would have that. I have about 7-octave custom range, and they are the notes you would expect, except they have a very different sound because there's no air blowing through a reed or string vibrating against a soundboard.
Right. So I would think that it would be more of a pure sound, purer than a piano possibly.
Yes and no. It is a sine wave, so it's an electronic frequency, so it doesn't have that purity, but it's a pure sine wave. So it has the ability to, like that mysterious mechanism of the human voice, waver in the air the way most instruments cannot do.
Wow. That's very interesting. Talk to me a little bit about the members of the Divine Hand Ensemble. How many members are there and what instruments do they play?
We have a 9-piece group. Myself, I'm the musical director and I'm the concert thereminist. I have my arranger and cellist. His name is John Salmon. And then I have a string section comprised of Monique Kenyer, Julie Myers, Britt Walmsley, and John as well on cello. And then we have a viola da gambas named Rachel DeCama. On top of that, we have a separate quartet going off to the other side where we use 2 classical harps and marimba and vibraphone to accompany the string section with me as we perform opera arias.
And several of the members are also sopranos, right?
Correct. Almost everyone in the group sings. Monique, our violinist, specializes in a vocalin, which is the ability to sing and play so she can harmonize with me with the notes I'm performing. And all the girls in my group sing. We actually utilize that when we can for the show.
I think that's wonderful. Tell me a little bit about the repertoire today. I think you mentioned earlier on that you were doing an hour of your regular set and then an hour of funerary music. Let's talk about some of the pieces that you're performing in your first set.
Gladly. What's special to us about Laurel Hill is it's our only opportunity to play a whole show of funerary music. Funerary music is a special kind of music that was written in the 1500s, and it's very powerful and moving, and it's written for the dead. And we specialize in powerful and moving music, so we were fascinated by funerary music. And we went and found as much as is still in existence today, and we perform 1 or 2 pieces per show because it's heavy stuff. It's not toe-tapping, fun songs you're going to whistle along to, and it's not familiar to our brains like the way a Mozart piece would be. So it's very unusual and sometimes jarring. So we don't get the opportunity to play but 1 or 2 pieces per show. Laurel Hill gives us the opportunity to do a whole set of funerary music. And because funerary music is so heavy, we also open with a set of our regular repertoire. That way the audience gets the best of both worlds. And our regular repertoire today is going to be popular favorites and movie soundtrack songs.
Such as, can you name a couple for us?
Sure. Let's see, we're going to be performing the theme to the movie Highlander, written by Queen, Who Wants to Live Forever. We're going to be performing the soundtrack music to Edward Scissorhands, written by Danny Elfman, my favorite living composer.
I love that movie. Did you see Edward Scissorhands, the ballet?
I did not.
It was amazing.
I bet it would.
You would love
See,
it.
I would love that, especially if it has any of Elfman's music. I have every soundtrack he has, and Scissorhands is amongst one of his best works. And then we're doing a whole bunch of stuff that I couldn't even tell you what we're playing, because we're going to do something a little bit different here. We're going to let the audience pick some songs that we play out of a hat. And we'll see what end up being on the plate for this evening as far as our first set goes. I do know that we will be performing the specials Ghost Town tonight because it's the Laurel Hill Cemetery.
Yeah, that's a great song. I saw you perform that in Ardmore. I love it.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit more about the funerary music. Why was funerary music created?
It's an excellent question. People have asked me a lot of questions about funerary music, but never quite that angle, and that's a very important one. Up until the birth of funerary music, music was written for the living to help console them in their grief, to transform their grief into a moment of beauty, to help them deal with the living presence. And about the 1500s, some musicians got the idea of, well, what about speaking on behalf of the dead? And they decided to do the opposite, to write and perform music for the dead, not to be heard or performed by the living at all. And they were very serious about this. And this began to thrive all over Europe. It lasted almost 300 years.
Wow.
It was a tradition of people performing only for the dead. And the concept behind that was that the musician would help the newly departed soul realize that it was gone.
Get it to the other side.
Get it to the other side, cleanse it of its sins. The Protestant and Catholic religions used funerary music to help cleanse the soul of its sins and guide it up to God. Some of the other religions used it as a way to guide to whatever the afterlife would have been. And the funerary musician's job was to stay by the gravesite from sunset to sunrise and perform solely for the dead. Many of these people refused under penalty of death to perform for the living.
I've never heard that. That's very interesting. So if this music is 200 to 300 years old, you probably had to do quite a bit of research to find some of these pieces, and I would assume that they are mostly classical pieces, or are they different than classical?
No, they're mostly classical pieces, but because they were written for the dead, they don't have to follow the same rules as music writing followed 300 to 500 years ago, which meant there's a lot of jarring time signature changes, there's unusual stops, there's the open fifth string kind of sounding like a funeral drum march that you'd never find in like the romantic period of classical music. That mixed with the very dizzying-like effect of trying to wrangle the soul to the musician gives it a very unusual sound. I think that's what makes funerary music so different. There's not a lot of it out there. We've located 26 pieces, including what we found in the vaults of the Vatican.
The vaults of the Vatican.
Vaults of the
Wow,
Vatican.
that's pretty amazing. Do you have a favorite piece that you'd like to share with us this evening? Are you sharing anything?
I do. I think my favorite piece of funerary music is the very first one we've ever found. It's written by Gretchen Fleiss. It's called The Dizzying Flight of Death. We have a video for it on YouTube. It's seen quite a lot of views. It's from our first concert that we ever performed. It was the first piece of funerary music we ever performed. And of all the funerary pieces I've ever heard, I think that one says it all. It gives you an exact example of what funerary music is all about on the violin side of things. Before the funerary violinist, of course, there's the funerary harpist. But funerary music really began in earnest with the violinist staying by the graveside.
Playing. Right. Wow, that's amazing. Never heard of that. Very, very, very interesting.
You know, there's a reason you never heard of it, because Pope Clementine declared at one point that no musician is allowed to intercede on behalf of man, for God. And that is exactly what the funerary musician did, and therefore the practice went out of fashion after 300 years of thriving in Europe. It stopped pretty quickly and never quite made it over here to America.
How did you find out about it?
We were researching for our repertoire more powerful and moving music, and we were reading testimonies from famous people, even composers, who had witnessed funerary music and the awe and the power that it held over the living to take that crucial moment of their impending sorrow and transform it somehow. And we were fascinated by it, so we started to dig until we found some written scores, and all my violinists just dug right into it and fell in love instantly with it.
Is it mostly for violin? Because I would think if someone were standing by a graveside, that would be the easiest instrument to play.
It is. For the dead, it's mostly violin. For the living, I think the first instrument would be the harp or the flute for the living. But for the dead, it's definitely violin, and I think the way it's written, it utilizes the maximum amount of the instrument itself. And that's a beautiful thing, considering that the funerary violinists had to play for something like 12 hours straight.
Right.
Exhausting.
Right, sure, half a day from sundown to sunrise. Wow.
Last light to first light is how that worked. Last light to first light.
That would be a good song title. You should write that.
Hey, we should. My other
for the theremin.
There you go. Now, having studied so much funerary music, I had asked my funerary violinist if she would write a piece for the whole ensemble in funerary style, but incorporating the instruments that didn't exist then, vibraphone, marimba, a full string section, and of course the theremin. And that's called Funerary Suite No. 1, and we're going to be performing that tonight as well.
Oh, wonderful. Can't wait to hear it. Mano, how can our listeners find you and find out about the Divine Hand Ensemble?
You can go to our website for all of our upcoming shows and our videos in order of us doing them. That's www.divinehand.net. You can read about our up-to-the-moment postings on Facebook at the Divine Hand Ensemble. And for the most part, you could also visit our YouTube channel, which is known as the Divine Hand Ensemble, which just recently passed 100,000 views for our 17 videos.
Congratulations. That's wonderful. That's great news. Mano, thank you so much for being with me today. I greatly appreciate it, and we are so looking forward to your performance this evening at Laurel Hill Cemetery. This is Charlene Chamberlain for Front Row with Mano Divina of the Divine Hand Ensemble, who will be playing until the edge of darkness tonight. Thanks for watching.